The Effects of Childhood Sexual Abuse on Adult Attachment Style and Attachment to God in the Married Christian Male, a Research Proposal by Amy Doyle. Many married Christian males who are also survivors of childhood sexual abuse exhibit anxious and avoidant attachment styles. Literature indicates that one's attachment style in adult relationships can be reflected in one's relationship with God. This research attempts to identify this relationship quantitatively. Identifying this relationship will help clergy, therapists, and other helpers, as well as the survivor and their loved ones, in conceptualizing ways in bringing holistic healing to the survivor's relationships with God and others. Childhood sexual abuse plays a significant role in the insecure attachment styles of male survivors. Also, limited research identifies a connection between CSA and attachment to God. Male survivors have been shown to experience negative spiritual effects, including a distancing from God and their religion. Our research finds a gap in the literature in that there are no studies examining the relationship between adult attachment and attachment to God in Christian male survivors of childhood sexual abuse. Finding this relationship is beneficial not only to the survivor, but to their spouse, church leader, and counselor. Many survivors of childhood sexual abuse experience difficulties in relationships due to anxious and avoidant attachment styles resulting from experiences of their abuse. Furthermore, God serves as an attachment figure subject to the same anxiety and avoidance seen in interpersonal relationships. The purpose of this quantitative study is to understand any relationship between adult attachment style and attachment to God in the married Christian male survivor of childhood sexual abuse. This study explores a select group of married Christian males' adult attachment style and their attachment to God by using the Experiences in Close Relationships Revised questionnaire as well as the Attachment to God inventory. As mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual beings, it's important to bring healing to each of these dimensions following the effects of childhood sexual abuse. In helping to bring healing to the CSA survivor's attachment to God, we are providing healing for an often forgotten aspect of the person. Theoretically, this research views the subject's relationships through the lens of attachment-based therapy as it relates to human attachment as well as attachment to God. John Bowlby first raised awareness of this attachment between infant and parent as integral to psychological health. He identified that this initial emotional bond creates an inner working model a person develops based on the quality of attachment. The three basic attachment styles discussed in this research are secure, anxious, and avoidant. These same attachment models are used to identify one's attachment to God. Healing the damage of childhood sexual abuse on the Christian male's attachment not only affects how they relate interpersonally, but may provide a healthier way for men to engage in relationship with God. Conducting a quantitative study facilitates an understanding of the reasons behind the perceived difficulties Christian male survivors of CSA have in attaching to God. The dependent variable is attachment to God. And to find the ways this variable may change, the independent variables of attachment styles, secure, anxious, and avoidant, are assessed. To find the participants' attachment styles in adult relationships, they will complete attachment assessments. Next, the subjects complete an attachment to God questionnaire. For comparison, married Christian males without a history of CSA will be assessed using these same tools. Completing both assessments will reveal whether the subject's adult attachment style is the same as their attachment to God style. Upon completion, a comparison can be made as to whether CSA affects a person's attachment to God. There are two primary assumptions made in this study. The first is that the severity of the survivor's sexual abuse is not in question when it comes to measuring one's adult attachment styles or attachment to God. Our second assumption for the purposes of this study is that attachment styles will be affected no matter who perpetrated the abuse. Our study does not include survivors of abuse perpetrated by members of the clergy. There is limited research on the direct effect of CSA on one's relationship with God. Furthermore, research on measuring one's relationship with God apart from identifying abuse is minimal. Therefore, there are many limitations to the study, the first of which may be the effect of longevity in one's relationship with God. This study does not identify whether this makes an impact on the way our participant conceptualizes their attachment to God. Additionally, this research makes no delineation in the effects of one's chosen denomination has on how they think about the relationship with God. It's not uncommon for survivors of childhood sexual abuse to confront their theological assumptions when healing from their abuse, changing their God image and the way they conceptualize their faith. This study does not identify those who have gone through this spiritual journey and those who have not. The study also does not identify whether the participant has any experience of trauma apart from childhood sexual abuse that may have had an impact on their attachment style. Finally, biases based on the researcher's lived experience as a spouse of a Christian male survivor of CSA will be addressed by employing independent analysis and member checking of the final data. Research variables include: dependent variable is attachment to God. Independent variables are the three main attachment styles: anxious, avoidant, and secure. Predictor variables are men who have history of childhood sexual abuse and men without history of CSA. Extraneous variables are those men who have experienced their abuse within the church. The target population for this research is married adult Christian males with lived experiences of childhood sexual abuse. Research indicates that instances of abuse in men are determined to be about 25 million. Our research did not uncover the approximate amount of these survivors who are both married and claim Christianity as their religious affiliation. Samples for this research will come through referrals from Christian counseling ministries in the researchers' community. To identify the subject's adult attachment style, this research utilizes the Experiences in Close Relationship revised test. The assessment is a short questionnaire designed to identify the attachment style in one's romantic relationship, which will then identify attachment style throughout other relationships in the person's life. To identify the subject's attachment to God, this research utilizes the Attachment to God Inventory. The AGI is modeled after the ERCR. This assessment tool identifies our subject's attachment style to God. Moving on to threats of validity. Population could be a threat in that there may be differences in one's God image across denominations. A possible relationship between variables could also affect validity. This is the correspondence and compensation question in God attachment theory. The correspondent hypothesis says that the person's adult attachment style mirrors directly their attachment to God. The compensation hypothesis, on the other hand, states that one's God attachment makes up for the insecure attachment in one's relationships. There is some indication that one's length of relationship with God may influence this factor. Another threat to validity may be one's knowledge of attachment styles prior to actually taking the assessment. Ethical procedures include informed consent, maintaining confidentiality, and conflict of interest on the part of the researcher as a spouse of a Christian male survivor of childhood sexual abuse. This research hopes to find a relationship between adult attachment style and attachment to God in married adult Christian males with lived experience of childhood sexual abuse. We hope to do this by utilizing the ECRR and the AGI assessment tools and comparing the results of those men with CSA and those without. Our hope in finding a relationship is that the survivor, their spouses, pastors, and helpers will be more informed as to the importance of addressing the God wounds attributed to the effects of CSA on the survivor. Jesus says, "Let the children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." If Jesus holds children in such high regard, I can't help but think of the grief childhood sexual abuse causes him. Knowing he weeps with us and uniting these men back to a loving Heavenly Father who cherishes their boyhood should be a motivating factor towards seeking knowledge and helping to address these wounds.